amazing movie. I think we can all agree. Maybe give us. I wanted to ask you just what motivated you to tell the story about AI through the lens of a Adivasi woman, single woman, in a data labeling center. What motivated you to take that journey?
I think the first and foremost thing is that this work is actually happening in Jharkhand and in many indigenous parts of the country, including Chhattisgarh, some parts of Telangana which are indigenous, and some parts of Rajasthan. I think that was first and foremost very exciting and very interesting. But as I began to work on this subject, the premise, often a great premise, is a curse, as they say, because your hands get tied behind your back, and the film can just be that an Adivasi woman working with AI, and it'll just get done with that. But the question was, where do you take it to? And that was far more exciting, because there was an idea of data labeling mirroring the act of parenting. And because when our children are growing up, we teach them how to differentiate between colors, objects. We push our morality onto our children. And similarly, we are seeing that the same job is happening when Nema is data labeling for algorithms, right? So that was very exciting to realize that is very much like parenting. So AI is like a child, and or can be like a child. We have to be kind of careful about is like a child and can be like a child, because there are certain fundamental differences between algorithms and children. So I think that became the most exciting reason, and that drove me the most towards the subject. The film began as part of an impact fellowship called Museum of Imagined Futures. It's initiated by a company called Story Culture. And my producer, Madhivanan Rajendran, who's not here, had this idea of integrating CSR money into filmmaking, because
Right? Come on.
And getting essentially commissioned work, which, as you rightly you said the other day, that this commissioned work happens in other art forms, but it doesn't happen in cinema as much, right? And it began as a part of that fellowship. There were about 200 odd applications, from which 4 were finally shortlisted.
And the theme?
Yeah, 4 were finally shortlisted and 2 were greenlit. The theme was a story on an overlap of tech and society, right? So it could mean anything. I wanted to do it on, initially I wanted to do it on colonization and imperialism finding its way into social media. There's another film with my film called Tracker. It's on surveillance. Now these films were they greenlit our films as short films. So the challenge was, I didn't want to waste this film on a short. So how do you pool in money and how do you make it into a feature? So you put in your own money, you get another co-producer, and you get as much support as you can, and you make it with whatever resources you have. And I think, yeah.
Amazing. I just wanted to follow up on that. When you were doing the fellowship, how did this particular idea of data labeling emerge? Did it come from your research? Did you read it somewhere? Did you meet someone?
Yeah, that's absolutely pertinent, because as I said, I wanted to do it on something else. I wanted to do it on this social media colonization idea, but while we were at the fellowship, it was a digital interaction. It was not a physical interaction till then. There was a researcher and a writer called Karishma Mehrotra, who writes for the Indian Express and who also has written extensively for New York Times and has written for 52. So she has a essay called The Human Touch, which is one of the first essays or articles to highlight Adivasi women working with AI. So that's where the premise came from.
Kiran ma'am, what drew you towards this film as a filmmaker, as a producer? What was so exciting? What did you find exciting about this film that you wanted to be associated with it?
To begin with, it's such a beautiful, poetic film. I mean, you go in thinking, okay, Adivasi data labeling, but as you rightly pointed out earlier, it sort of draws you into this world that we, sort of we look at AI through a very, very empirical, sort of discrete lens of how it's going to impact economies, how it's going to affect workflows, how it's disrupting different kinds of industry. But this film sort of draws you into a sort of broader philosophical conversation. And it draws you in a very gentle way, drawing parallels between, of course, parenting, but also really ancient knowledge systems that we stand to lose, that are slowly going to be erased, talking about representation, about sort of equitability in this kind of labor. So also in a sense, a kind of data colonialism. But at the same time, for me, what really affected me was this woman who was struggling as a single mother and her relationship with her daughter, and I have a son around the same age. So there were so many things that I could relate with. So yeah, many things, and I feel this film has so many wonderful layers. Every time you watch it, it reveals more to you, and it's one of those films that really, draws you into this conversation about what data and data labeling and AI systems could do, because at the end of the day, we are feeding in genetics into a new kind of intelligence. It's how do we want this new intelligence in our lives to be? And I think these questions need to have South Asians, people from the global South involved, and we all need to participate in those conversations.
As an ethnographic filmmaker with your rich history and experience, how did you get involved in the film and what drew you to this particular story?
फिल्म जहाँ से खत्म होती है, जो लास्ट सेंटेंस जो होता है कि आपको सुनाई दिया, मैं वहीं से अपनी बात शुरू करना चाहूँगा। क्योंकि ये जो फिल्म है, ये खासकर जो मेन कैरेक्टर जो है, उरांव कम्युनिटी की जो लेडी है, मैं भी उसी कम्युनिटी से हूँ, मेरी कम्युनिटी की जो कैरेक्टर है वो है। और हमारे झारखंड में जो सिस्टम है, मतलब जो ढोकू प्रथा को लेकर जो बात कही गई है, उनको बहुत अच्छे से इन्होंने पर्दे पर उतारा है। इस फिल्म में सबसे अहम चीज़ है कि आदिवासी जो फिलोसॉफी है, जो दर्शन है, और आदिवासी जो नॉलेज सिस्टम है, साथ में जो सहजीविता की भाव जो हम लोग बोलते हैं आदिवासियों में, इस छोटे से छोटे चीज़ों का भी क्या महत्व है। अगर एआई के थ्रू आप देखे होंगे कि भाई वो कह रही है कि ये पेस्ट जो है सड़ा हुआ पत्ती को खाता है, बाकी को नुकसान नहीं पहुंचाता है, तो हम कहाँ तक सोच पा रहे हैं उस चीज़ को। अभी पूरी दुनिया एक तरीके से एक तरफ अगर देखें तो तहस नहस हो रही है, लेकिन आदिवासी जो है कि भाई एक छोटे से छोटे चीज़ों को कैसे बचाया जा सकता है, यही एक मैसेज देने चाहते हैं। तो हम तो ये भी कहते हैं कि अगर आदिवासी बचेगा तभी प्रकृति भी बचेगा, हम लोग का ये भी मानना है। तो इस फिल्म के माध्यम से जो नॉलेज सिस्टम है उस पर बहुत गहराई से काम हुआ है। तो मुझे लगता है कि ये जो लास्ट सेंटेंस है, अगर आप सुन पाए तो बहुत अच्छी बात है।
Aranya, I would actually want you to add to whatever Biju I was just speaking about, especially that one particular aspect of how that specific insect wasn't a pest. That of course, that's also a video that went viral on like Instagram also.
On your channel.
Yes. But it's such an amazing nuance. I think nobody, like anyone who is seeing the film for the first time, they would all feel like we didn't really look at it that way before, and it's such an amazing nuance that of course you have borrowed from, I'm sure, from your experiences of interacting with people there. Could you just speak about that specific nuance as well, but also how you got these intricacies right?
Specifically about the worm, I'll say, and then from a writing perspective, I'll quickly talk about it. From the worm's perspective, I would trek with a lot of Adivasi boys to find locations, because there is no line producer in Jharkhand which would work for a small film. There are big ones, but not for a small film. When I would trek with these boys, they would be like, look up there, वहाँ देखिए वो दिख रहा है आपको वो वाला कीड़ा. I would be like, यार मुझे नहीं दिख रहा है. I can't see it. But tell me, sure, tell me. So they would say that that worm is a specific kind of worm which only eats the rotten part of a plant to protect it from decaying further. I was like, this is incredible, because every time you look at a caterpillar, or in agricultural research, we talk about caterpillars being like that, being that kind of a pest which we really need to take care of, for which pesticides have been invented. So now that comes from the anecdotal kind of interaction, but from a writing perspective, for me, what was important was that I needed a scene where I could the whole film is about, if the one-liner is an Adivasi woman interacting with AI, but what does that really mean? It means two things. One, that if it were any other community, she would perhaps not see life in the AI algorithm, right? Because she can see life in the AI algorithm is why she cares. And because she cares that much is why she wants to impart what she believes is correct, right? So वो जो दर्शन की बात कर रहे थे ना, fundamental kind of division and fundamental kind of, I would say, a conflict in hegemonic knowledge systems and smaller knowledge, as A.K. Ramanujan has beautifully put it, little cultures and larger cultures, right? He said that the fundamental conflict between these two is that there is always going to be मतलब छोटे वाले knowledge systems are going to be extremely, उनको दबाया जाएगा या वो दब जाएंगे या they'll be unheard. So that in that scene it needed to come out as a roaring sort of announcement, and which I hope it does.
Yeah. I think that scene and a lot of the other scenes, the team made a huge effort in making something like AI and technology so human. And I think there are, and I'll ask you, Kiran, there's probably a lot of challenges in unpacking such an abstract concept like AI into an emotional story like Aranya did. So, what are some of the biggest challenges in doing that through cinema?
Actually, it's so interesting you asked that, because I was just thinking about how through use of technology, let's say in the last couple of decades, we ourselves have changed. There has been a slow change in behavior. There might be, in fact, actual physiological changes. They say things are happening to our thumbs, things are happening neurologically to us. So there is, anyway, in this kind of intersection of what AI does to how it affects everything, we are being affected physically as well. And I think it's become so part of us that we now, it's very hard to make that kind of distinction even anymore, because actually, technically, even your regular Google search at some point was just taking lots of data, collecting it, giving it to you in a certain order of, importance, preference, etc. So we've become accustomed to this, and I don't think, as we've gone along, I feel we haven't really stopped to question a lot about it. We're now kind of feeling the repercussions. We know how it's perhaps causing greater anxiety, greater depression. It's disconnecting us in many ways, while it's enabling so much as well. So I think it's so complex that this film, I think, with a couple of scenes, really in some way distills what this conversation ought to be about. For one, it was the conversation about the pest, which is only one kind of industrial consumption economy going to dictate how we look at anything, which it has been. It has been, it is a colonizer's view, or it's an industrial complex view of something that has found its way into how we, assign tags for anything. But also how that, in that sense, we as participants in it are going to be affected, and whether in that process we are going to have to, it's a different kind of colonialism. We're going to be dealing with the effects of that in our everyday life. So that tribal woman sequence, how many of us have actually tried Mid-Journey? We've all tried to create an image of ourselves. And there is a definite slant towards a more Western, European kind of iconography, and does Asia find a space in it? Does Africa find enough of a space in it? Just in general, is the diversity of the world going to get flatlined as a result of these kind of systems that need to just make everything into a label? And I think both that one scene of the pest and the tribal woman, but also the kind of when the you see the girl using it in a different way, and you see that there is potential for us to. There's always the flip side is that it's going to make our lives easier, and we're at a crux when we can actually do something with it and change it. So that I think in a film has not really been done to this extent, and I don't think these conversations with this kind of sort of depth and more broad sociological lens have actually ever looked at. We only really look at it in a very economic kind of perspective, and it's either good or it's bad, And I think this conversation about it being in that sense at that nascent stage when you are parenting something is really important for all of us to take away. Do we have enough of a right on how it's being developed? And it's going to find its way into all our very average, like daily systems, so we don't really have control over a lot of that.
Can I give an anecdote of the tribal woman scene? So we've been when I was introducing the film, I said we've been doing these screenings across the country for a while, and we're again going to do that. In that there was a screening for Adivasi scholars for a program called Coexistence Fellowship, and they generated images of themselves, right? There's a boy in that group whose community works very normally and very naturally has integrated crocodiles into their village, right? So he generated an image of himself, so and so, holding, just interacting with a crocodile. The image that turned up was that of an alligator, and the boy was fair-skinned, right? So that's the kind of bias which is still there, prevalent in AI. We want to kind of make this a thing. We want people to generate their own images and see for themselves where is it going wrong.
बिजू, अगर आप भी इस पे कुछ ऐड कर सकें कि जो AI के बारे में सारी कॉन्वर्सेशन हो रही है कि AI can help us in like making the world more inclusive, पर साथ ही साथ अगर वो सही लोगों के हाथ में ना हो या फिर उसको एक एम्पैथेटिक लेंस के साथ ट्रीट ना किया जाए, तो ऐसा भी हो सकता है कि उससे और ज़्यादा इनइक्वालिटी बढ़े, जो कि स्टार्टिंग में हो रहा था, लेकिन धीरे धीरे करके उस चीज़ में पूरी दुनिया में काम हो रहा है. मतलब जो बड़ी बड़ी कंपनीज, गूगल या मेटा वगैरह, all these companies are now working on, they have departments that are specifically working towards ethical training of AI. पर हमारे देश में इतनी ज़्यादा डाइवर्सिटी है, इतने सारे मार्जिनलाइज्ड ग्रुप्स हैं, हम कैसे ये मेक श्योर कर सकते हैं या फिर AI सिस्टम्स कैसे मेक श्योर कर सकते हैं कि मतलब वो इंक्लूसिविटी को लेके आए, ये सारी कम्युनिटीज़, मार्जिनलाइज्ड कम्युनिटीज़ को भी हम लोग इंक्लूड कर सकें AI सिस्टम्स में?
सबसे बड़ा सवाल तो ये है कि जो डेवलपमेंट की जब बात आती है ना, तो इसको परिभाषित करना बहुत जटिल हो जाता है, क्योंकि खासकर आप गांव एरिया में देखेंगे तो आदिवासी वर्सेस डेवलपमेंट, अब कुछ भी होता है तो सब चीज़ को डेवलपमेंट से ही जोड़ा जाता है. अब जब डेवलपमेंट की जब बात आती है तो आदिवासी दृष्टिकोण से कैसे हम देख पा रहे हैं, क्योंकि अगर उड़ीसा हो, छत्तीसगढ़ हो, झारखंड हो, तो सबसे बड़ा चीज़ होता है डिस्प्लेसमेंट का सवाल. अगर कुछ भी होता है डेवलपमेंट के नाम पर तो डिस्प्लेसमेंट, तो वहाँ पर सबसे हम लोग मार खाते हैं. अब AI की बात करते हैं तो अभी पूरी दुनिया डिजिटल की तरफ है, सबके हाथ में मोबाइल है, तो AI हर कोई चाहता है कि भाई डेवलप कर रहा है, और कर भी रहे हैं, तो उसे अछूता तो नहीं है. तो जो अच्छे चीज़ हैं उसको एक्सेप्ट तो करना ही चाहिए, करेंगे ही, क्योंकि विकास की दौड़ में हम कहीं पीछे ना रह जाए, ये भी सवाल है. लेकिन कितना हद तक आगे बढ़े ये अहम चीज़ है कि वो हमारे लिए कितना ज़रूरत है और कितना ज़रूरत नहीं है. तो अभी सबसे अहम चीज़ वही है कि भाई किस चीज़ को हम अपनाएं. और कितना हद तक अपनाएं, ये सबसे बड़ा चीज़ है।
और किसकी दृष्टि से,
किसकी दृष्टिकोण से विकास को देखें, ये है।
Aranya, what role has Denis Villeneuve played?
Immense role in this film. Denis Villeneuve is one of my favorite filmmakers. Arrival is one of my favorite films, as is yours. And when I would be sad in Jharkhand and I would not find a location, I would sit on those hills and watch the trailer of Dune. So he's very, very special to me. Why he's special? Because he and Nolan and Kubrick have done what I'm trying to do with this film, which is that there are very large philosophical ideas, but told, there's a string of emotional storytelling between a mother and a daughter, or Interstellar, for example, between a father and a daughter. But on that string of emotional storytelling, you're hanging one after the other, things that you want to say, the larger things that you want to say, and it's just so much more effective if it's told emotionally.